Welcome you to the meeting of the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee of the 1st of July. Can I remind members the meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for listening. Before we go on to the agenda, I just want to add a couple of comments to the statement that the leader issued at full council on Monday regarding the EU referendum. It's obviously now a week on from the EU referendum, and its full implications are obviously yet to unravel. But I did want to take this opportunity to reaffirm the leader's statement of the 28th of June that the economy of Dumfries and Galloway continues to be the top priority for this council and in particular for this committee. It will be a long time before we know the full impact of the result of the referendum, and while it presents a risk to our economy, I think we need to reassure local businesses that the services they currently receive from the council will continue. As far as the council is concerned, it's business as usual. Now, we've been seeking clarity from the EU, from government and from COSLA, and I can confirm that the EU programmes that currently provide the financial backing to business services are committed until December 2018. As we'll have seen from the national media, it will take up to 2 years from the instigation of Article 50 of the Treaty on the European Union before the UK will cease to be part of the EU, and it's anticipated that the UK will not invoke this until a new Prime Minister is in place in the autumn. During the negotiations, we therefore remain very much part of the EU and will play a full part in all EU business, apart of course from the internal EU discussions on the UK withdrawal. So during that time, I think we need to reiterate the fact that the support from the Council, funded from the European Union, will continue, and I hope that all members will reassure businesses in their wards that that will be the case. Okay, can we have the Sederunt and any apologies?
Good morning. We have 17 members present. We are quorate and have no official apologies as yet. But Councillor Collins, Councillor Foster, Councillor McCutcheon and Councillor Nicholson are not present but may be along later in the meeting.
Ian?
I thought we had apologies from Councillor Collins, actually.
Yeah, we'll put them in. Councillor Nicholson's attending a funeral, but he'll be back at the meeting shortly. Okay, no other apologies? Okay. Can we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, can we move on to item number 3, which is the budget monitoring report? Can I ask the Director if there's anything he wishes to add to the report before members?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members' questions? Ivor?
It's maybe a sugary nail, but it was mentioned education on Tuesday, and being a relatively new boy here, as I haven't been for a couple of years, can you tell me, have we agreed this year's budget to allow officers to take forward spend in this current financial year?
I think that's certainly an issue we're going to discuss when we come to the business plan. If you look at the business plan, there is a table that shows you the projected spending for the year ahead. Now, I'll say a wee bit more about that when we get to that particular item, but by definition, by agreeing that table, you are in effect agreeing the breakdown of that budget for the year ahead. But I do think, as I'll come to that later on, we do need a lot more detail about how the specific spend will actually pan out. So we'll come to that under the business plan, but it's a valid point. We were very clear when we set the budget process in February. The administration had a very clear line in that timetable that said that we should agree the business plan, but also the budget for the year ahead, and the target date for that was July. We'll come to that under that. Any other questions? Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Members happy to note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move to item number 4, which is the Economic Development, etc. Programme, the Outturn report for the capital programme. Can I ask the Director if there's anything he wishes to add to the report before members?
Thank you, Chair. I just advise members that we reissued Appendix 7, and you should all have copies of that, and the areas of change are highlighted in that appendix. Now, have we any further copy? We have some further copies if members haven't got these. Thank you.
Any member looking for a copy? can we hand a couple of copies out to any member that's not brought theirs along? Okay, can open it up to members' questions. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Paragraph 3.22, reference is made, Chair, and forgive me for being parochial. Following severe flooding events in Newton Stewart, revisions have been made to the flood risk assessment. Once complete, a commission to procure a detailed design engineering solution will be progressed. My question, sir, would be, when is that likely to be complete? And 3.25, Chair, reference to failure of quay wall works at Garrison Harbour. The contractor has agreed to undertake remediation works at their cost. Notified yesterday by Andrew Herd that in fact that work has now started. It would be helpful, Chair, to know the likely duration of that piece of work as well. Grateful to you, sir.
Stephen?
Yep, on the Newton Stewart, I've just been advised myself that the works have started, but we'll check with the contractor and we'll get details on the duration back to yourself, Councillor Geddes. And on the Newton Stewart, the flood risk assessment, we're looking to procure that. I think probably through the rest of, from the summer through the autumn period, we'd be working on that to get to a position where we could probably come back and talk with the flood advisory group, the local flood advisory group, and just keep them updated on that. And I see that as been integral to that process, is just keeping them briefed on where we're going with that in terms of working out the detail.
Patsy?
Thank you. I've got another question, but it's just sort of following on from that. I'm looking at page 17, where's the flood risk management budget and things. It's not been really spent at all, and I just kind of wonder what happens to that money. Does it get kept for another year?
There will be, going forward, that allocation will be there. That's primarily that underspend is associated with the Stranraer flood protection scheme and the kind of delay in taking that forward just with the kind of land ownership issues and reaching agreement on that. That will be re-provisioned and we will have agreed that back in the March EEI committee that funding is still there.
My actual question was, I'm looking at page 13, which is to do with the Corrie's budget area, and I noticed that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the projects there had no budget allocated against them. So were these unexpected, or were they carry on from a previous year? Which is the Annan Railway Gateway, there's the Annan River Gateway, there's the Annan Master Plan, there's Windermere Road, I'm not quite sure where that is, and Lockerbie Town Centre.
Yeah, those projects have completed at the Gateway projects, and that's the remainder of the spend that's left.
You've spent it? It's not left, is it? No, from what I'm reading here, and make no mistake, I'm no accountant, but I'm reading that there was no budget for these projects, and suddenly there was money made available, which...
No, yes, it probably reads that way. It's not intended to read that way. There was a budget allocated to those projects, and the projects have been completed. I suppose there should be a figure in there for those, but we need to get back to what that would be. But the remainder here is just the remainder of what's left to be spent. So it's the...
Chair, can I maybe help on this one? Is the minus numbers an underspend off the budget or not? And is the, I mean, the Gretna Sentinel and the Gretna Green in Springfield are still ongoing. So therefore, the actual net spend to the 31st of the 3rd, 16 is what? That, the 184,000 from the 445. And what's left is 260 for the remainder of the works.
What caught my eye, Chair, was the fact that there was nothing in the column for the budget allocated, and suddenly there were 5 projects that were allocated a budget. And I just wondered why. Sorry.
mean, my interpretation when reading the report was that the expenditure was allocated for 14-15. And clearly some of it slipped into 15-16, but also can keep it right if that was the case. Or why would there be expenditure if there's no budget allocated to it? Yeah. I think we'll get clarification on that and just circulate. But my interpretation, certainly when I read it, is that funding was allocated for 14-15, but obviously some of the work continued into 15-16. But we'll get clarification as to what the allocations were. Make sure that members are aware of that.
Chair, if I could undertake to write to members and explain that clearly.
Okay, I've got Graham next, then Ronnie and Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Just if Mr Herriot could circulate all the Mid-Galloway members with the information that he's given to Alistair with regard to the flooding and the flood repairs in Newton Stewart, that would be the start. If that's okay. Didn't think there would be Alistair. But my two questions: the forestry routes discrete schemes. Is this the money that's paid into an account or a fund to repair the roads? Because the damage that's being done to our secondary roads rather than the main roads across Dumfries and Galloway by the forestry is phenomenal. And if I remember back to 2010, was it, when the road that disappeared up between Moneyhive and Kersfairn somewhere, and the fund was completely emptied and it didn't even look at the repair to the road. I'm just wondering how much money is in this fund and how much is paid in per tonne or per lorry or per whatever it is, the rate of payment into it. That's my first point. And in 3.27, Kirkcudbright Onshore Power Supply, an escalation in costs, but it doesn't give us any sign of what that escalation in costs could be. Could we have some of that information, please?
That's it, okay. The forestry routes discrete schemes is effectively funding of a value of 150,000 that we take out of the 9.5 million. And what we're doing there is effectively saying as part of the roads programme capital funding, we put specifically to forestry routes for dealing with areas on the agreed routes map where there might be severe restrictions, and we actually want to do some sort of investment in order to open up areas of landlocked timber. So really it's targeted at maintaining some of our more heavily used forestry routes. The idea is that we use that funding when we're successful. We draw down funding from the Strategic Timber Transport Fund, and that can be up to a doubling of the funding that's available there. So that we identify each year, we identify a number of projects that we want to take forward in conjunction with the forestry industry to open up areas or to deal with bringing relief on some of the smaller roads or where we might be running a lot of timber through communities. We might be looking at, the Estilemuir bypass was probably one of the biggest projects we took forward in early days, and we put in some funding there and got quite a significant amount of funding from the private sector, from Forestry Commission and from Scottish Government through the Strategic Timber Transport Fund. So that's the idea there is that we identify areas that there needs to be works to the road, and that might be strengthening, that might be putting junctions in to support in-forest accesses that might bypass some of the public road, or it might be putting in passing places. So it's really to support projects to take forward and bring relief or strengthening to the public road network. Where there is damage to the public road network, you mentioned the road at Moneyhive off the A713, and on that occasion we did extract money from the companies that were involved in that to pay for some of the repairs to that road, because they had breached the management, the agreed extraction management programme that we'd agreed with them, and there was evidence of that. And that is the case. If they do, we do monitor that, police that, and if there's breaching of that, we would go after them if there was damage at specific parts of the road network. It is a small amount of funding, but it's what the committee has decided to take out of the general funding for roads, for surfacing, for reconstruction, for works in the carriageway, to target that directly at the forestry related routes.
What is the rate that the forest operators or the forest owners pay into that the fund? Is there a rate per tonne, or is it just a sort of donation now and again? How does it work?
The private sector don't contribute to that fund. We've obviously got our funding through the council, the infrastructure asset class capital programme, and we have the funding through Scottish Government is about £3 million a year generally to the Timber Transport Fund and other kind of related timber haulage projects. Where we have discrete projects identified that we take forward, some projects will come forward by the private sector alone and will be fully private sector funded. Where we have works in the public road and on kind of private land, we tend to go into bidding situations to the Timber Transport Fund in conjunction with the private sector, and funding will come in from both sides. There is no levy on the public road for the private sector for use of some of our routes, taking timber out. So there's not a direct levy on the private sector. That there can be contributions from them where there are projects that are mutually beneficial, and we both want to bid into the Scottish Government's Timber Transport Fund.
And the Kirkcudbright thing?
Could I just ask again what the question was on 3.27?
3.27, Kirkcudbright onshore power supply, and it says at the end there's an escalation in costs, but it doesn't give any indication what that might be.
We can circulate that final figure. It certainly will be in the Outturn report, so we could pick it up for the September report and put in some detail on that when we know what the concluded costs are. It has been a project. It is flagged up in the report because it is externally grant funded, and it's our practice just to report and continue to report on projects where there is external grant funding. There have been increases in costs over time as the project scope has developed, or there's been some project creep in terms of the scope of the project, but we'll pick that up in the September report as an ongoing monitoring item.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 31, it mentions the B721 Scott Street. B721 is the main road through Annan, other than the bypass, and there's several major improvements planned for that. The new traffic lights, which is mentioned in here, the resurfacing of Scott Street, and also there's a link to cycleways, which we're in discussions with John Howell at the moment. Just all these things, and what I'm asking is that the Scott Street one has slipped from last year to this year, and it's also mentioned in the cycleway. I wouldn't like to see it postponed again just because we're thinking. And equally, I've raised it with Jason and others through the Annan Master Plan, because there's plans also for the Annan Master Plan, and there's sort of 3 big projects with 3 different parts of the council. I just want some assurance that there is some working together, because we don't want any postponement because somebody's got a, oh, hang on a minute, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So if there is a council working together so that these things can be delivered, the planned improvements are I think, September. So hopefully the several arms of the council are working together to achieve that, because at the moment I haven't been given that assurance.
Good morning. As Mr Ogilvie indicates that we have had discussions with the local members about the proposals at the Church Street, Solway Street, Scott Street junction, and we're going to, following the public consultation that we undertook on that and the responses we've received, we're going to look again at the options for that and go back to the members, the ward members, with the options available and the pros and cons of that. That does potentially delay when that work can be undertaken, so we're speaking with our maintenance colleagues who have planned surfacing works in the programme at that same location. Obviously what we're trying to do is coordinate different programmes together to minimise any wasted expenditure or maximise the benefits of any road closures that are in place. The particular complication at that junction is the sawmill that's down Solway Street, and when the works can actually be done at that location in terms of a road closure. Similar applies at the Lady Street, High Street junction in the town centre, where we're coordinating together the traffic signal refurbishment with the planned resurfacing. So we are trying to work together and coordinate things and not sit in our own wee silos. We are trying to work together. Thank you.
Can I come back to you? I appreciate that, John, and I know that, but the public, we were told, as members told the public last year, that the second phase, because Church Street was improved dramatically, but as soon as you come off Church Street onto Scott Street, there's a huge difference, and they said, and we have assured them that it will be done. It slipped into this financial year. I just don't want it to slip again too far. So I take what you're saying. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that. I've got Jim McClung next, then Jack, and then Jim Dempster.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to try and avoid it, however, it's been brought up already regarding the flood protection thing in Stranraer. I've sat here now for 4 years and listened to the fact that it's going to be taken forward once the land issues have been sorted out. When are we actually going to get the land issues sorted out? It's been 4 years that I know of. If you look back in other papers, it's been longer than 4 years. When are we actually going to, if we have to grab the nettle and actually take it to a court to get it sorted out? And in 3.24, the Colstay Bay A716 says the project has now been carried forward to 1617. Have we any idea when that project will actually start?
Okay, yeah, Stranraer Flood Protection Scheme. We have been reporting for a number of years in terms of not being able to move forward because of the landowner issues. The significant parts of the wider flood protection scheme have been delivered over a period of years, and we're down to the last kind of 2 items within that out of about 8 or 9 kind of total work packages in Stranraer. It's probably not something that we've particularly been active in over the past year. A lot of focus for the flood risk management team has been on a lot of dealing with the response and also dealing with pulling the local flood risk management plan together. We have commitments within the local flood risk management plan and the timescales for the Stranraer project, and we will work towards those commitments and, if necessary, would look at using statutory processes that would let us take forward by compulsory purchase or otherwise take forward the actual works on the land under question.
With regards to Kilstay Bay, the works are actually on site at present, hopefully with a completion next week on site, and then sort of looking forward from there.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in, Chair. I saw the work was actually being carried out. I just didn't ken if it was this one or part of the previous one, so I'm glad to hear that. And really, the answer to my question under 3.22 is we're in the same place we were 4 years ago.
Yeah, but in terms of that, we've now got that within the plan, so a renewed focus, hopefully, on delivering that, given the plan. We've got Jack next.
Thanks, Colin. It's at the top of page 39, the first 2 parts. We've got the 7 accidents at Buccleuch Street at the traffic lights. Subset of 5 of these close to the Buccleuch Street Whitesands junction. Now, every time this has been brought up at police and fire, they say there's not a problem. There's, you know, I don't know who damages all the barriers there. If they said there was no accident, and yet today we see here there was 7 accidents, 5 of them close to that. And on the St Michael Street, Brooms Road one, again, lots of complaints about folk jumping the lights at both of these. Now, is it the lights that are at fault, or is it the drivers?
If you jump a light, it's the driver that's jumping the light rather than the light jumping the driver. But,
I think it's more serious than that, Colin.
I think it's very serious, but I don't think you can blame the traffic lights for a driver going through the lights. So there's an issue over timing. It's certainly the case. But I think, let's be very clear, we should be making the point that people should not be going through a traffic light irrespective of what the timing is, if it's red. I think that's an important point we shouldn't underplay. But on the issue around the accidents at the Buccleuch Street, Glasgow Street to Charlotte Street issue, is there anything you want to add to that, John?
Just briefly, Chair, that this is a location that keeps appearing either through our AIP programme, which looks for a cluster of accidents in close proximity, or the particular one you're looking at there is where the review of urban areas for potential 20 mph speed limits, which again is essentially looking at clusters. With regard to when we've looked at this location through the AIP programme, we haven't identified any common causations between the accidents, and therefore it's very difficult to identify any mitigation measures that could be put in place to try and alleviate those accidents. But we do keep looking at these locations, and if we can come up with measures that can address them, we'll happily do so. But We haven't found anything at the moment. Maybe it's just a reflection of the volume of traffic and the amount of, for example, pedestrian activity at that location.
Just have to, I think the next thing will be somebody will be really seriously hurt, especially at that Buccleuch Street one. So I'll be bringing this up on Wednesday at the area committee about the police and what they're going to do about it.
John made the point there that there's no measures being identified that would actually stop those particular accidents. There's nothing you can physically do. It's entirely obviously an issue around drivers, but there's not that, you know, short of stopping the road, you know, there's no proposals that can be brought forward that would actually prevent those accidents, given the nature of the accidents. I think that's the difficulty. Probably largely down, of course, to the huge volume of traffic in that area. Okay, we've got Jim next, and then Ivor, and then Dennis.
Thanks, Chair. It's page 45, 46, the accelerated installation of LED lights. One of the reasons given for the accelerated programme was that it would save time for electricians going to remote communities to repair lights, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering why on page 46, pin punts featured with no replacement LEDs, and I don't see it on the programme anywhere. And in 45, 46, I see kilohomes in 45 with 371 columns and 46 with 27. Memory serves me right, I think there was a street had lights replaced in advance of the programme, but just confirmation would be helpful because it's sometimes confusing when you see the same community featured in two different sections of a report with the same equipment.
Yeah, there's an error in the table there. There's no figures. There should be figures against pin punt, and we can correct that. In terms of killohome appearing twice, we can check, but it might be that there's been two phases to the works.
I think, aye, Stephen, I think maybe Anderson Street was done. It's just clarification. That,
yeah,
so.
we'll clarify that. We'll certainly.
Thank you.
We'll get the information in pin punt.
Thank you.
Okay, Ivor.
It's with regard to 3.29, the Whitesands flood prevention. I noticed that we've spent about half the budget on the actual design. At 3.29, there was substantial additional engagements. I'm just wondering if there's been any project creep there whereby we're actually going to end up over budget on that, or are we confident that we'll hold the design part within the 196,000?
In terms of the Whitesands budget, in terms of the flood protection scheme, the kind of underspend identified against that was primarily because we weren't kind of cracking on with kind of the detailed design against the original programme, and a lot of that was really just taking a step back and you know, reviewing the scope of the scheme and adjusting the scope of the scheme. And that work, although you know, there were costs against that, it wasn't programmed to be as it wasn't as expensive as moving on with full sort of design. So we've kind of looked at reprofiling that in terms of when pushing the costs forward to get us the detailed design, but we believe we can accommodate it within what's left in terms of the budget allocated to that for the development of the scheme. And we're not anticipating the significant changes in the total works cost over what we've originally or recently advised committee.
Okay, Dennis, then Archie.
Thanks, Chair. Page 39, and it is the Annandale and Esdale traffic calming. It's the second bottom on Parliament Square and Rosevale Street. That consultation has taken place in the last week. It's now what are the next stages, because I presume it has to go back to Transport Scotland to be looked at, and then is there another public engagement coming? Because for the last 5 years we've been trying to get things like yellow lines painted on Langham High Street, and it keeps going back to another consultation, and while this is probably Transport Scotland more than ourselves, do we have any timescales? Because the public are really fed up with this one. And then, Chair, there's a second one after that.
You're quite correct. There was a public consultation on Tuesday this week organised by Transport Scotland with regard to a 20 mph speed limit for part of the A7 trunk road within Langham. Working again with the trunk road agencies, we've looked at a 20 mph speed limit on surrounding roads. At the consultation, a number of members of the public raised queries about the weighting restriction proposals on the trunk road, and Transport Scotland said that really what they were looking to do was having advertised that previously and gone through an engagement process, some issues had been raised about traffic speeds. So what they wanted to do was undertake this exercise with regard to the potential 20 mile per hour speed limit and then go back to the weighting restrictions. The display was quite well attended by members of the public. Essentially, we are now waiting on Transport Scotland assessing the questionnaire sheets that were handed out and looking forward to taking forward a 20 mile per hour speed limit order in conjunction with Transport Scotland for the centre of Langham.
And the second one, Chair, is on page 43, the very top one, B318 Terrace, south of Langham. This road is the road that is used if the A7 is closed. So at the moment it is causing severe problems, because if the A7 does get closed, then people have no simple route of getting round and getting into Langham. Well, it won't take heavy vehicles, it certainly takes light traffic. We also have the problem of farmers and people like that live on one side of the slip having to now drive 5, 6, 7 miles roundabout to get to land and that. So people are now starting to take shortcuts. We've got motorbikes going down there and breaking the law. We've got pedestrians going down there. We've got people on push bikes and even cars and that forcing their way through this. It's just, when is this going to have a chance to be sorted? Because it's now something, it was I think, Desmond that caused the damage. So we're now sort of 6 months into this and there's still no clear definition, date or cost. And I think we really need to get this one moving because it is causing great hardship to a lot of people.
Chair, it was the same point I was going to raise. It was just looking at the estimated cost, there's options between 50,600 and 2.3 million. That's a hell of a difference, you know, and just looking at, depending on what option is selected. There was funding available, I believe, with Scottish Government for Storm Desmond for road infrastructure. I don't know where that is at the moment. I don't know, you know, where we are within the process of actually getting some funding to get these carriageways repaired. But I agree with Dennis, there is some, you know, issues. I'm not sure what we can do about drivers' behaviours and pedestrians' behaviours other than put the road closure sign up and keep it up, but then they are breaking, you know, road traffic regulations. It's the same as what Jack was saying earlier on. What do you do? Do you close the road off completely by barriering it off, and that stops all the sort of things that you're saying, Dennis, or what do you do? You know, it's one of those questions.
Chair, it is barriered off, but they keep opening the barriers and driving through them.
Sorry. On the first point of tariffs, there have been options sort of developed at the moment, and as I say, there is the range of sort of costings for them, and they are sort of very dependent on what option is progressed, what is deemed as the best solution. Completely take on board what you're saying about sort of the diversion that's currently in place and the sort of the issues that we'll be having. Depending on the option that is pursued, that will depend again on timescales and sort of what then happens sort of moving forward with that.
But Chair, what we need is some sort of timescale. It's now 6 months, and the last thing I saw was suggesting it was going to cost 400,000, and it was certainly now up to Christmas, and so we're into another year. And I mean, this really is hardship for a lot of people.
Yes, Chair, thank you. On the same point, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Dennis and Archie. I mean, it's been 7 months now since that road was closed because of the landslip. You know, you are saying options are still being reviewed at the moment. You know, 7 months down the line of a road that is completely closed because of a big landslip and is not passable at all, we should be not just still reviewing options. We should have had options put before members before now so that we can take a positive route forward and get this costed and get the job done and get it fixed. I mean, 7 months for a land slippage and a road closure, it's just not acceptable. We shouldn't still be reviewing options. We should have had those options as a priority put forward. And just because it is, you know, it's not a major road, if it was a major road, they would be done within weeks. And, you know, we get the feeling that it's not a major road, but it is still an arterial route for that particular area and across through Newcastleton and across the Langham. So we need to get this moved forward and get this finalised.
Okay, yeah, right. We'll certainly bring back options to committee, and those will include what the funding options are. It's actually part of a package that part of the question from Councillor Mayo was the funding on this. We did get £1.7 million funding from Scottish Government, and that dealt with some of the kind of the flood grants to properties and businesses that were affected, plus some of the immediate costs, the kind of revenue costs of the council. There was also £5 million that had been made available by Scottish Government that we've bid into. We've provided detail to Scottish Government, and it certainly points out that we reckon that the options range in costs from about 50,000 to 2.3 million, depending on what the final solution is that is deliverable, what is the best engineering solution. And some of those significant costs are to do with the kind of the slope stabilisation, and it's not just the repairs to the road, so it could become a significant project. Well, certainly we'll bring back the options to this committee, and I would hope by that time that I might have some indication on where we stand with what we might get out of the £5 million nationally that Scottish Government are looking to allocate. We've pulled together data on that, and we reckon we have a bit capital costs of about £3 million that we're bidding into that £5 million. And we know other councils have bid into that 5 million and that it is over committed. But in terms of the options that we can take forward, what is deliverable and what is fundable, it very much hinges on what we can get out of the Scottish Government funding, the additional funding, and that is being assessed by Transport Scotland. I would hope to be in a position that we would know the answer to that in terms of the funding and that we could report back to this committee in September.
Can I just ask on that point that it's probably highly unlikely, given the allocation from the Scottish Government, we're going to receive every penny that we've asked for, given the fact it's oversubscribed. To what extent would this have qualified for funding through the Belwyn scheme if we had put forward a Belwyn application?
My understanding is that these capital works would not have been eligible for Belwyn funding because they weren't. Revenue costs are considered for Belwyn funding, and costs incurred within the first 2 months of the event that has been claimed against are eligible. Out with that, capital costs not eligible, out with the first 2 months not eligible in terms of a Belwyn claim.
Chair, can I then ask what is plan B if we don't get this money? Because I mean, say this is serious for this area, very serious for this area.
If we don't get any allocation out of the 5 million against this project, we can bring the options back to this committee in September, and we can say what the impacts might be, what we think the options are to take forward, and what the impacts might be on other parts of the budget.
Chair, can I come back in that, Chair, because Transport Scotland aren't the fastest. We've seen that with the consultation on the A7 through Langham with the 20 mile an hour side of things. So, are we pushing them for an answer on these particular road defects?
I'm involved in the kind of process nationally of collating that data for them. So Aileen spent about 3 days of her time pulling all that together and providing it to Transport Scotland. We probably do have an in there just to push them a bit on the timescale, and we can certainly do that and ask them what the update is on the timescale on coming to a conclusion on the funding.
Okay, we've got Patsy then, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the 20 mile per hour limits at schools, which is on page 39 and 40. And I've got 3 schools listed in here in the Stewartry, 2 of which would very much like to have their the possibility of 20 mile per hour limit around their school reviewed. But what I find concerning there is that they're here and there's words used like potential works to be reviewed, possible works to be developed. There's not very much. There's nothing very specific, and I don't know what they can do as primary school boards or whatever. I know both Gatehouse and Auchencairn would dearly love to have something implemented quite soon because the speed of traffic going into the Auchencairn particularly and past Gatehouse is quite considerable. But I don't know how I can ask you to speed that up or give a time for it, because I think for the school boards and things who ask this time and time and time again, it's not really good enough to say, oh, it's possible works are being developed. It's not really very satisfactory. And I noticed something's happened in Cullen that's made everything go bump, 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 which is useful, but presumably not for Cullen. But so I just wonder if you could be more specific.
You've asked very nicely, let me say so, but at the end of the day, the 20 mile per hour speed limits, there's a prioritisation order, and that requires me to go and look at urban areas and identify any clusters of accidents, when we then come to schools to deal with those in the basis of the school role, which has Cargan Bridge Primary School, I think, is at the top of that list at the moment. We are conscious of the requirements and the desire at Gatehouse, and you'll recall we had a scheme developed for that, and ended up with objections to proposed road humps, because otherwise that would be in place already and would have been for 4 or 5 years. We have gone off and measured speeds more recently, hopefully they've done that before the end of term today, to allow us to just go back and look at that and have another rethink and try and start again to come forward with proposals, particularly at Gatehouse, where we had the scheme all worked up. One objection ruled that out, unfortunately.
I think, to be fair on that one, the objection probably was from the fire brigade, because their fire engine has to come along that road, and I don't think it wants to go over bumps if it's in a hurry. So I think that would be a consideration. Maybe it wasn't, but I think that is something to...
The objection was from a member of the public.
Okay, and finally, Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. Well, saying it's a final, that's ideal, because that's what's just got to come forward to say. Other than possibly adding a recommendation at 2.11 that we borrow up to £1 billion to resolve all our issues that have been raised up to now, which I don't think is feasible. I'll just move the recommendations because they're only here for noting at the end of the day, Chairman.
We move to the recommendations. Sorry, Ronnie, yeah.
When we get this report again, what would be useful, and it's on the LED lighting, it doesn't say, it's quite big numbers. If you look at Lockerbie, Moffat and somewhere else, it's hundreds gone in. So we don't know how far down the programme we are. And it's 3 years into the programme, so if we could just get a running total on what's to be done and what's actually done. It doesn't mention Annan at all, I know Annan said some, but the other thing is that it's nearly 3 years since we started doing this, and the reliability of these units and the cost effectiveness, that would be nice to get that so we can see we're actually achieving it. I mean, this is useful, but it doesn't tell us the full story, Chair, so if that could be included in the next report.
I'm sure we could probably get that information circulated to members. I don't think we need to bring reports. I'm sure we can get that information, given the fact September till the next meeting. Yeah. Okay, members, thank you very much for not being parochial at all in any of those questions. And can we move to the recommendations? Members happy to note 2.1 to 2.10? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thanks to the officers. Can we turn now to item number 5, which is looking ahead to the capital programme in relation to our economic development projects. Can I ask the Director if there's anything he wishes to add to the report before members?
Yes, Chair, I have a correction to advise members of. If we look at the table at the top of page 49, under the M74 corridor development / Chapel Cross, the figures are 50, 150, 150, 350. Now that is not reflected in the table in the appendix at the end. So if you turn to that table in the appendix, page 51, at the very bottom line, M74 corridor development / Chapel Cross should read 50, 150, not 100, 150, 350, not 300. And then over the page 52, the programme total 20491470 should read 1520. And the total at the end of that column 5449 should read 5499. And therefore the ultimate total should be 5820 instead of 5770. My apologies for that. Thank you.
Okay, can open up to members. Ian Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Just happy to note the recommendations, in particular the 330,000 that was allocated or agreed by Wigtown Area Committee for the Stranraer waterfront.
Okay, any other members? Go to the recommendations. Oh, sorry, Jim and
Only one, Chair, thank you, and it won't be for today, just clarity. I am sure the Sanker Public Realms total figure was 70 as part of the programme. If that can be clarified and come back to me. No for today, Chair.
Come back to you on that one. Ivor?
Chair, don't want to raise this issue, but do any of these programmes that are looking for external funding rely on external funding from our neighbours in Europe, which may not come forward because some of them are aiming for 18-19 spend I think you said it was business as usual to about the end of 18 just now until we trigger the Article 50. So do any of them go into future years that we might be developing up and then find that the carpet's pulled from our feet?
No, there's no reliance on EU funding.
Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Members happy to note 2.1 and to agree 2.2? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, can we go to item number 6, which provides members with an overview of applications made to the Scottish Government's Regeneration Capital Grant Fund. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report before members?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members' questions? Jim?
Yeah, Chair, I'm actually quite glad to see all of these coming in front of us. I have been asked by a colleague who actually comes from the Dalbeattie area ward regarding the Dalbeattie Community Hub. While he, and on my reading, myself actually agrees, actually looks like a very good project and I have no problem with it. However, it appears that there's been a submission put in for 350,000 and it will provide a whole lot of stuff. However, the report itself actually says that community consultation about the use of the building and services will actually start in April 2017. What my colleague would like to know is when was the proposal as it sits in here actually conceived? What, if any, engagement was there in the community? Because it doesn't appear as if there's been any, and there's not going to be any until April 2017. It would appear, both from him and him talking to his ward colleagues, that none of the ward colleagues actually knew about this plan. What happens next if this initial expression of interest gets through to the second stage and they are asked to put in a second stage? What flexibility is there to develop, amend or improve the concept that it's actually in here in consultation with the community?
The Economic Development Department has been acting really as the coordinator for the Stage 1 process here. And we have been doing this in the context of a very short period with which to respond to the Scottish Government for applications. I think there is a gap between the Stage 1 approval and the Stage 2 application, which allows projects to be worked up in detail. But whether that would give sufficient time to do detailed public consultation will be a matter, I think, for the team that put this project together. It may well do. I don't know in terms of the specific detail. But if this gets through the Stage 1 sift, then that's something that could be reviewed.
Jim, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the likely answer, that you were only the ones that drew everything together and actually gave it to us. I think my colleague will actually have to ask the department that actually put the application in. Thanks very much.
I think it raises a couple of issues just about the fund itself. That the very fact that obviously these applications have had to go in before there's no member approval as such. Now everybody, the projects themselves tie in with council priorities, but because of the timescale set by the government on the actual grant fund itself, there's no opportunity for members to scrutinise it either here in terms of the economic development projects or in the case of the Dalbeattie project, presumably at the Children and Young Persons Committee. So I think that's a real issue that maybe we should take up at some point. We shouldn't turn down any opportunity to bid for funding, but I think the timescales for this particular fund are obviously incredibly challenging, and officers are effectively having to put applications in just to meet what is an incredibly tight timescale. Certainly an issue, but I think it's important that we do pass on to education the issues that Jim has raised, I think.
Could I just add, Chair, that my colleagues in education have indicated to me that due process and engagement will be undertaken before final options appraisal is presented to the committee for consideration.
I've got Ian Dick next.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the Stranraer Millennium Centre application, can I just ask for some comment on the big lottery funding application? Because from what I remember, This was started before I ever came onto council, which is coming up for 10 years. You indicate that the match funding is due to be in place by late 2016, which is the big lottery, and a site start 2017. Could I just have confirmation that this is now confirmed, that we know that the big lottery funding will be available and this project will be able to start by then, because it certainly would be welcome.
This particular project has been put forward by our community's colleagues. I can go back to them and get clarification on that.
Yeah, I think that's just the, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's something we could probably discuss going forward and how we actually deal with this particular grant. If there are applications coming in from other departments, so to speak, then maybe reports should actually go to those committees on the back of this, so there can be scrutiny there. But I think that's something we can discuss going forward. Should there be another round of this particular grant scheme?
I think, Chair, I can give an undertaking that we have to think about this very carefully in the future, and we have to be inclusive with all members and understand what their desires and suggestions may be before we actually get into this position. But we're forced by timescales to take forward, and we want to be able to achieve and draw down as much external funding as possible. So there is a better way of doing this, to involve all members and communities, to be inclusive, and be assured that we'll look at that very carefully.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me back in, Chair. Is regarding the Millennium Centre, I think Mr Speedy will know what's coming here. The ones that were put forward last year by Economic Development was one for Stranraer, one for Dumfries. I was involved with to see if the Millennium Centre could actually be put forward. Unfortunately, because it wasn't in any of the business plans of either the communities or EEI, it couldn't go forward. They accepted that explanation rather reluctantly, but they did accept it when I explained the situation we were in regarding there was one for Stranraer, one for Dumfries was going forward. And then lo and behold, when the stage 1 applications were actually published, there was a third one had went in from Dumfries and Galloway out with the knowledge of this, the head of service here. I'll refrain from saying which one it was, but it was ultimately unsuccessful as well. The officers that are here dealing with this, I realise, as I said before, that they are only really the collators, but we do actually need to find a better way of dealing with this, so that we actually know what ones are going forward and what consultation, etc., has been done with specifically the members of the public that are out there as well.
Also.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's in relation to the Millennium Project in Stranraer as well. Can we have the assurance, sir? It says in the first paragraph what the project will deliver. It talks, in fact, about helping to revitalise the centre of Stranraer. Now, I know that the chair of this particular project was exercised, if we can put it that way, when the tentative proposals for the redevelopment, for instance, of the former George Hotel were made public. And the assurance I would seek is that, both projects are developed in a complementary fashion, Chair. I think that, I'm totally supportive of them both. Let me make that abundantly clear to you, sir. But as I say, I think, standing the expressions of concern, it would be helpful to have that assurance and to make sure, in fact, as the projects both develop, as I'm sure we all hope they will, that is borne in mind, as I say, and what eventually arises is complementary and not duplication.
That should really go without saying. I think we would certainly look to work together with the project managers of the Millennium Centre. I would perhaps also like to highlight at this stage that this is simply just a stage 1 application. There is no funding that comes with approval from stage 1. The projects, if they're approved at this stage, are then given the green light to go ahead to submit further detail as part of a stage 2 submission that would bring funding with it.
Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Members happy to support principle of the stage 1 applications at 2.1. And 2.2, agree to receive a future report once outcome above is known. I think it's probably be an idea to add to that report that to also consider in the report a process going forward. Should the Scottish Government continue this particular grant fund, that we should have a look at the process that we adopt to decide which projects actually go forward for application. I think it would be helpful to have that in that paper coming back to members. Members happy to include that? Okay, can we turn now to item number 7, which is the Director's end of year assessment of the business plan. Can I ask the Director if he wishes to add anything to the report before members?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. We do have an extensive team available for detailed questions, and I'll hand it back to you, Chair and members.
Good, okay. Can we open it up to members' questions then? This will be the moment where there's no questions, when there's all these people waiting to answer your questions. Ivor.
Chair, it was on page 98, the percentage of staff that completed an annual performance development review. It's slightly dropped. It says here, due to staff resources, and then it says the completion of this task will be met through existing resources. If we have a staff resource issue, surely we're struggling to meet it through existing resources. So should we not be looking to actually make sure that we have sufficient resources in there to do the job? Because as was highlighted on Tuesday, we're going into difficult times and we need to start stopping doing things. And I know that sounds Irish, but I'm sorry, that's racist. I better not say that. You know, it's down to the stage where are we actually struggling now to find the resources and staff time to do everything? I know officers always want to please members and say, yes, we can do this, but maybe we need to actually look at that and say we're struggling and we do need a wee bit more leeway, or we need to adjust our tolerances a bit. Other than that, there are 2 or 3 things that are sort of in red, but I think overall with the resource implications we've had over the last couple of years, I think we're doing a reasonable job, and it's notable that we, along with DG First as it was, have got our health and safety programme in place as well, and there's no red issues in there, so commend them on that one.
I think on the specific first point you made, I think it was a temporary staff issue that may have led to those particular figures, but I'll let Alistair explain what that issue was.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hislop, for these remarks. Thank you. The 19% that's missing very much relates to our bus drivers and the 45 odd that we have, and it's one member of staff that almost looks after these, and they're very much done remotely. And we did have a temporary issue, and what we're saying about dealing with it within existing resources is through a reshaping. We will address these.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's page 95. It's in relation to the community transport provision. Can I make the plea, sir, that, you know, as Swiss Trans increasingly has to tighten its belt, for instance, and that, you know, transport problems, particularly in the more peripheral rural parts of the region, seem to grow, that we make every effort, Chair, to ensure, in fact, that this region-wide commission for community transport is developed, you know, as expeditiously, not to say urgently, as it possibly can. I'm aware of the background that's going on. Without embarrassing Douglas, I got an extremely helpful briefing note from him earlier on in the current week. Jim McClung and I did, and grateful for that. But as I say, it's an issue, Chair, which I think we've really got to address and push to the maximum amount possible.
Thanks, Chair. The reason that the community transport is red in the report today is that we had one milestone left within the Commission, and during the year we've moved through the Community Planning Executive to look at a local outcome improvement plan for community transport, which is very much in development at the moment. It has been agreed by the Community Planning Executive Group and has been to the Strategic Partnership on the 17th of June, and we are working very closely with third sector Dumfries and Galloway, who are leading on that at the moment. And it will be continually developed expeditiously, as Councillor Geddes suggests.
I hope it's not a case, Sir Chair, of leave old horse and you'll get corn. This is desperately needed. You know, for instance, I'll give you a classic case in point. The proposed amalgamation or the possible amalgamation of the Wigtown and Merrick medical practices in Newton Stewart. Now, part of the fallout of that, Chair, will be, you know, that if the proposals go through as mooted, we'll need, you know, some form of community transport, as it were, you know, in the North Machars. Almost dedicated provision to allow people, you know, who have to come into surgeries in Newton Stewart and who don't have transport to be able to do so. And I'm sure that that will not be unique, given, for instance, Chair, the number of GP vacancies that exist in the region. That's just one case in point. Forgive me, I'm not meaning to come across as being parochial. I'm trying to be strategic in this because this is a strategic issue. And I think we've really got to afford this the degree of priority, Chair, that it warrants and act accordingly and develop it. But I'm grateful, as I say, for the briefing note, the first-rate briefing note that we've got.
I think that the point's well made. I think you're right. It's an issue across the region. We've got Archie Graham, then Jim McClung.
Thanks very much. I just want to come back to what Ivor said about the annual performance review for staff. I think it's being the Healthy Working Lives person, elected member on that particular group. I think it's really important that our staff do have their appraisals on annual, and we should never stop doing that particular thing. More importantly, with the change that's actually happening within EE&I and DG First coming in, I think it's really important that, you know, staff need to know where they actually fit within the organisation and need to know what their responsibilities and accountabilities are. The way to do that is through their APRs. Now, I understand what Alistair's saying, try to get 19 bus drivers together or 42 bus drivers together with one person is going to be a difficult thing to actually do, but I think we should be trying a lot harder in making sure that APRs are actually carried out so that staff understand that they where they actually are, what they're actually going to be doing, and more importantly, they're one of our best assets at the end of the day, and we need to, you know, they need to understand that as well.
Yeah, I would agree with these comments. Staff are our most important asset, and it's very important that through the PDR we have feedback both ways. It's the only way we can measure performance. It's the only way we can understand the training needs for staff, and I can give members an assurance that we will do everything possible in the new department to ensure that the target is met.
Okay, I've got Graham and then Jim.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 100, percentage of householders receiving a curbside recycling service. It's dropped from 20% to 19.4%, which is not a lot difference. But if you read halfway down, the 19.47% reflects the percentage of households receiving the curbside recycling service rather than the percentage of households which are actively participating. It would be nice to know how many are participating. It would also be nice to know if that number is rising or falling. I have a suspicion from our little enclave where I live that I think there are 8 houses, and I know that there are a lot less of them participating in this than were participating at the start. And it would be nice to know if that trend is going down, and then we can maybe identify why it's going down. But if you could, it would be nice to have those figures if they were possible to get.
Yes, we can undertake to get these figures. We'll say some more about this in a later report on the collection.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. It's the exception report, percentage recycling for household waste on page 101. The interpretation part at the top, the last paragraph says that the Scottish Government for recycling for composting for all municipal waste was 30% by 2008 and 55% by 2020. Can I have clarification on where the 55% by 2020 comes from, because it's no anything that I recognise.
Do you have any assistance regarding that? Do we know where that comes from? Moira? Thank you.
I think that 55% was from a previous Scottish Government strategy before the zero waste strategy came in.
Yeah, if I could just come back in that, for as far back as 2008, well, but this and its predecessor committees have been told that by 2020, the Scottish Government target is 60% And the EU directive target is 65%. That's as far back as 2003. So I don't recognise where the 55% comes from.
No, I'll have to look into that and come back with clarification for you where that figure's come from. But the interpretation section of this report comes from Covalent, the performance reporting system that the council inputs the data into, so I can clarify where the source of that information came from.
Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, I think we've reviewed 2.1 and 2.2, scrutinised 2.3. Are there any particular actions that members wish to propose, or are you happy that the actions that are set out are adequate? Alistair?
Basically adequate, Chair, but I go back to the comment I made about, sort of community transport. I think it would be good if you're agreeable, Chair, and colleagues are supportive to get some reference made to the need, in fact, to develop that as expeditiously or as quickly as possible. That would be helpful, sir.
I think we'll take those very words and include that in the agreed. If members are happy with that? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, can we move now to item number 8, which is looking forward and the business plan for 2016-18. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report before members?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members? I want to, just before we go into the detail, I want to touch on the point that Ivor raised under a previous item. I think rightly expressing some concern over the financial information that's contained within the report. I think we were very clear when we set the budget that we wanted a process whereby service committees agreed individual budgets. We spend a lot of time looking for the savings, but we don't seem to spend a lot of time looking at how the money that we do have is actually spent. And I think part of that process, we were keen to have that level of scrutiny at committee as part of the setting of the budget going forward. I don't think the information that's contained within the report today actually meets that requirement that we set out in the budget process. I know that the administration have raised that with the Chief Executive because it's not exclusively an issue for this committee, it's an issue right across the Council. The same issue I think was obvious at Education Committee on Tuesday when there was one page on a £222 million budget, and I don't think that offers members sufficient opportunity to scrutinise the budget going forward. I think there's issues around how then do we actually give permission of heads of services, for example, to spend specific sums of money as well. I think there's an issue around that. And there's a wider issue when it comes to the fact that, as the leader made clear at the full council meeting on Tuesday, that we've got some significant savings to find again next year if all the indications are correct. And how can members properly identify the priorities that we need to find savings in on the basis of the information that's been provided so far, which is one page per department. So that's certainly an issue we've raised with the Chief Executive. The pledge that was given is that reports will come to the next round of committee meetings with more detailed financial information, and that will give members an opportunity to properly scrutinise that financial information. In the meantime, ABB information will be provided to members, I think quite soon, before the summer recess, hopefully, and that will allow members to start work on identifying some savings going forward. I think it's unfortunate that we're in a position where that report won't come to committees until September and August, which means we're obviously well through the financial year before we're actually carrying out that piece of work. We've certainly made our concerns known to the Chief Executive over that particular point. Okay, can I open it up to any members' questions? Archie?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at page 117 of 270, which is the challenges and opportunities, coming back to what you said at the start of the meeting and what the leader said at full council. I would presume that this report was written before full council and before what happened last week with regards to the EU referendum. And I understand that there won't be a significant difference between 2016-18. However, when you look at what's actually happening in the European Parliament and the potential for move to try and get either an early exit from European Union by other nations or other opportunities for individual governments, there could be an issue here that needs to be addressed within the challenges and opportunities side of things. So just raising the issue that there could be an opportunity or a challenge for the Council in the future for this.
Absolutely. Well made point, Archie. Yep. Any other members? Okay, I think we can go to the recommendations. The one final point I would add on it is there is obviously a number of the KPI targets within the business plan that have still to be confirmed and further information to come forward. I think I know that there's work being done on identifying those particular targets, and we'll obviously arrange for that information to be provided to members to make sure that you've got a wider set of KPIs in terms of taking the plan forward. But in the meantime, can turn to the recommendations on page 103. Are members happy to agree 2.1 and happy to note 2.2? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can we turn now to item number 9, which is on the planning performance framework, the annual report that we have on this framework. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report before members?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members' questions? Archie?
Not so much a question, Chair, more of a comment. I think this is a good report when you look at the overall performance in planning side of things. But there are obviously those issues that architects, designers, those that apply for planning applications do still have some concerns. And I think it's about maybe sharing advertising and making people aware about how many applications percentage-wise comes to planning application. I think it's somewhere in the region of 4 or 5% only come to planning applications committee. Everything else is dealt with in devolved power. So it's more a comment than a question, Chair. Just, I think it's a good report showing the high quality service that we actually provide. But there are some concerns, and I think it's perceptions rather than actual issues.
It's a fair point. I think it's a very positive report in terms of meeting the targets, and I think it's important, obviously, to work with local planners, architects, etc., just to iron out some of those concerns that are being raised. But I think very positive in terms of the targets being set. Okay, member Alistair.
I hope you'll take this in the spirit in which it's proffered. Page 191, talking about appeals, section 4, Chair, appeals and local review bodies. In the last sentence, it is noted that of the 4 planning application appeals which were allowed, 3, 75%, were the result of planning application committee's decisions made contrary to officer recommendations. I like people who are bad losers. It's a good quality to have in this life.
Yes, and I think they make a very valid point in the report, but who am I to comment and not being a member of the Planning Applications Committee? Do we have any other questions? No? Okay, can we turn now to the recommendations? I think you want to make a run for it while you're ahead, Stephen, unless you want to add anything to the
Chair,
report before members.
I was simply going to comment on the reflection of the added value that the Planning Application Committee brings to the decision-making process.
You probably just lost the recommendation there, Steve, I suspect. Okay, are members happy to agree the submission to the Scottish Government? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to the Department for a very positive report. Okay, members, can we turn to item number 10, to the Dumfries Gull project 2015, the report that we have on the progress with primarily the egg and nest removal scheme. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report before members?
I have nothing to add, Chair, but only to introduce Greg Douglas, who is our temporary manager at Environmental Standards at the moment. Thank you.
Welcome, Greg. Can I open it up to any members' questions on the report? The report itself is pretty self-explanatory. I know this won't be a parochial question about Dumfries, will it?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. To be honest, I have absolutely no problem with the Dumfries Gull project, etc., etc. However, 3.1 makes it clear that the gulls in Dumfries have been an issue for residents. You could put in Dumfries there, and visitors to Dumfries for a number of years. We are currently, from central funding, actually paying out of this. In Wigtown Area Committee, when there was extra grass needing cut, Wigtown Area Committee money was used to give extra grass cutting in the area. Perhaps as this only benefits Dumfries and visitors to Dumfries, is it a good use of central funding and perhaps not area committee funding? And the other slightly less controversial part is it says in the report that we have signed a 3-year contract already for the provision. When were members actually consulted in the 3-year contract being signed? The actual is 3.12. Contract for 2016 was awarded for a 3-year period. So the contract's already been signed.
Chair, in response to the first of those issues, the funding arrangements for the project were agreed previously by the former P&E committee, following on from the first ever report of the Urban Gull task force. So the funding arrangements were agreed centrally at that point in time. That's not to say that, as is suggested, that area committees can look at enhancements if they believe that there are issues within their own areas. The only point I would make in relation to that is that the costs associated with this, the resources, I should say, associated with this, is not simply the cost of the contractors and the external consultants. There is a fair demand on internal staff resources, which currently are extremely pressured within environmental health. So we would have to also advise area committees on any additional staffing implications. The 3-year contract has really been entered into in the spirit of achieving or continuing to achieve maximum efficiencies. I think you'll notice from the 2015 report that we were commended on our approach to securing the most efficient working for this project, and the move towards a 3-year rolling contract is a further development of that. The project itself isn't brought back on an annual basis for approval. It is an agreed program. It's a multi-year program. I think the report itself makes it clear that in order to effectively tackle the Gull problem, it requires a multi-year approach, because they have this 4-year breeding, fledging, and growth cycle. So to move to an annualized approval process, I think would be counterproductive for the success of this particular project.
To be fair, it's pretty common in the council to have contracts and commissions that over a period of time, if a particular item's within the base budget, and obviously the Gull project is within the department's base budget, so it's no different from any other commission or grant scheme that we have. Jim, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I didn't really have a problem with the 3-year contract being issued. I just wanted to explain the circumstances in which it was issued. You yourself just a minute ago said that we've got significant savings to find. We were warned by both the leader and the chief executive on Tuesday at full council that we're going to have to start looking at stuff we're going to have to stop doing. Steve's just said that there's pressure on environmental health staff in carrying out this. Environmental health have many statutory duties. I think perhaps this is one we may actually have to bite the bullet on, and what we're being warned is going to have to come in the future. There's stuff we're going to have to stop doing.
Certainly an option brought forward when we set the budget in February, but obviously rejected by members of then, I suppose, up to individual groups if they wish to take that forward in the budget process. I've got Ian Crothers, then Jeff, and then Ronnie will go away.
Thanks, Chairman. Now, I suppose it's the only point I'd like to make with this. I think Jim brings up some valid, I suppose, issues or concerns, you could say. But we certainly think as a group there's better ways of delivering this potentially. There's more simple ways that we could actually deliver the same. Going back to the budget process, we supported this. We removed it from our proposals. We did think it's important that this is actually achieved we did think there was different ways in which to do it. And it's Whitesands, Stranraer, Arran as well have a problem with seagulls, and Arran have a particular problem. We've addressed that in the past. That, I would imagine that'll come to a head at some point as we kind of find the funding or the actual ways to resolve the issues that we've had in the past, certainly, Chairman. But nothing wrong with what's in front of us today. But the 3-year, going back to the point Jim's made and yourself, the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council has made in regards to budget pressures as we go forward, there might be different ways or alternative ways in which to deliver the same outcomes in regards to we're getting this through efficiencies, you could say. So, I mean, I think the 3-year contract, maybe we should be looking at that straight away.
Developing into a budget process here. It's up for groups to bring forward proposals. I think the leader made it very clear at full council that groups should now be engaging with officers on proposals, given in particular what happened last year when some groups left it to the last minute. I've got Jeff and then Ronnie Ogilvie.
Yeah, I agree that it's in the place to be discussing the budget. I mean, we could make the argument that how does the money we spend on harbours benefit the people of Dumfries, etc. We haven't got a harbour here. But in looking at the report, on page 213, that table 1, obviously the number of Gulls shot up quite dramatically between 2009 and 2010. Is there any obvious reason why that would be the case?
The Gull Task Force have identified that there have been movements into the area. These have been caused by gull disturbance projects being carried out further down the Solway. Ribble Valley was one, and there was another one at Barrow and Furness. And the years they were being carried out, we did see an increase in gulls moving into Dumfries and Galloway.
Okay, we've got Ronnie Ogilvie, which I'm slightly worried about, but Ronnie.
No, I support the report. Because I spoke and I stand out there, because it's furthest away, I was watching a seagull attacking a guy with a dog along here. And then I looked up, there was 2 chicks on the roof. So obviously, you know, there is a problem. And it's not just at the Whitesands, it's up here as well. And anybody that parks their car over at DG1 will know when you get an omelette on your car what it's like. But the point I'm going to make is there's things we can do, but the public's got a role in this. You go on Annan High Street, the back of 1, seagulls are everywhere because the kids are out. You go at 2, there's no seagulls. They're clever things. So, you know, they know there's going to be food. That's the point I'm making. I know I've dealt with Greg locally on issues, and we've highlighted but hopefully when they knock down Stapleton Depot, that might do it, and you all get some Dumfries. But no, seriously, there is things that the public have to be responsible for. That things will only stay here if they're eaten, and if there's no food sources for them, they'll go back to catching fish or whatever it is they used to do. You know, instead of eating burgers and chips and whatever. So, good luck to you.
Well made point. I've got Ivor then Jim Dempster.
Chair, it's with regard to 2.1 in the recommendations, it says, note the success of the egg and nest removal scheme. Yet when you look at the figures, we seem to drop maybe 1 year and then shoot up the next. Where's the success in that? Or is it success as in a relative success as it's not working?
I think the issue is the fact that the scheme was aimed directly at tackling the gull problem within Dumfries town centre. And I think if you look at the figures, the number of gulls within the centre is down to 20%, which is a substantial change from where we were in 2000 when it was at 82%. The number of pairs of large gulls in the town centre is down to 130 based on the 2015 project. So you're seeing a continuous decline in the number of gulls within the town centre, which is where we receive the vast majority of complaints from. And at the end of the day, that's what the scheme was designed to target in the first place. Now, the rise in the edge of town is obviously an issue as well, but this scheme is very much designed to target primarily the town centre area, and I think it's been successful.
Chair, could I maybe just add to that? If you refer to page 219, which includes the actual report from the task force. If you look under paragraph 6, it does highlight there how considerable the impact of the work that we've been carrying out has actually been in terms of preventing what would otherwise have been a considerably larger increase in the roof nesting population of gulls across the town, and that the impact of all of this work shouldn't be underestimated.
Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. I absolutely support the recommendations and the report. An observation, Jim McClung's maybe not so far away in one respect, that I was at the War Memorial in Sankar this morning, and it overlooks a pond, and it's a gull nesting site. And the gulls there's quite a substantial number there, but what's going to happen next month is they're going to come to Dumfries or the seashore. They don't live in our area or the Sederunt. It's a nesting site, then they gravitate back. So we'll actually be breeding them for you. And and one of the options might be applications from other communities that have this problem to area committees to get some support to deal with the issue there, would then prevent an escalation of the issues here. It's for another day, obviously, and for area committees, but it's not just confined here, because the nest very much, not my lifetime, I know seagulls nest in the countryside, and then they gravitate back to the sea or to the coastal areas.
Okay, members, George.
Thanks, Chair. Just in the back of what Jim's saying, we actually have a large gull nesting site right opposite our house on the opposite side of Loch Ken, which is actually in the RSPB protected site, and there are literally thousands nesting there every spring. And as Jim says, they disappear somewhere, whether they come to Dumfries or where, I don't know. But these gulls are actually protected by RSPB within that site.
Okay, members, before anybody else decides to make an appeal for their nesting site in their ward, can we move to the recommendations? Are members happy to note 2.1? Yeah. And to agree 2.2? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, can we turn now to item number 11, which is feedback on the pilot scheme that we had in the Wigtown Source Separated Collection Service. Can I ask the Director if he wishes to add anything to the report before members?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to the report, but again, we have Nicholas Simpson and Ronnie Dempster here to take detailed questions, and I think Nicholas is just going to give a very quick summary to start with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Since the committee met on the 9th of February, the trial of alternative collection methods has been conducted in Wigtown, the details of which are included within the report that's before you today. The trial results show us that if the trial method is rolled out across the remainder of Wigtown, the recycling service can be provided within the modelled costs. The public have taken to the new system very well and are pleased with a weekly service collecting dry recyclates. The trial has also shown us that it is the residual waste collection that is the budget pressure, with contributing factors including high demand for residual waste collection, including additional side waste despite the drive to recycling, the interface with commercial collections and the continued depositing of residual waste at Galdenoch rather than the zero waste park at Stranraer, and as such costs more than anticipated against the model. Efforts now need to be concentrated on reviewing rerouting of residual waste collection to ensure we're collecting the waste in the most efficient method, to secure the ability to dispose of our residual waste at the Stranraer Zero Waste Park rather than Galdenoch, and to work with customers to revise our commercial waste collections. I've got nothing further to add at this point, but I'll be happy to take questions from members.
Okay, thanks for that, Nicola. Can we open up to members? I've got Ian, Dick, then Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions and something a little more fundamental. I mean, quite obviously the trial method, option 1, to me seems to be the preferred option. Can I ask, first of all, are we satisfied that the trial area is going to be representative? It is relatively localised. If that's rolled out, can we expect the same results or better? And the second thing, which is which I have asked for on numerous occasions, why have we not had any consideration in reports of the urban model with derogation of rural areas? I think that's a very important thing, and it's never been considered by this committee, to my memory, and I could be corrected in that. But I really think that's something that ought to be, regardless of the trial method, that we should be actually looking at the model, which I understand is used in Highland.
Thank you. If I could bring your attention to Table 2, which is just after 3.2.20 in the report. That shows housing density analysis across Scotland. And what that reflects is that the trial area, to talk about large urban areas first, that's like city centre Glasgow, which obviously we don't have here. And other urban areas at section 2 there, that 39% showing in Wigtown is likes of Stranraer, which being the biggest settlement. Obviously, the bulk of the trial was carried out in the Newton Stewart and surrounding area, which comes under sections 4, which will be Newton Stewart town itself, and then the remote rural areas, which make up the other 73%. So what that shows us is we've carried out the trial in the hardest parts in the main, and we've covered 73% of the ruralness of the area within that. We can get round the towns and the built-up areas far quicker than we can in the rural area, so we're happy that it will be representative going forward across the rest of Wigtown. Regarding the rural question that you also posed, we find that we want to be inclusive in this council and provide the service to as many of our residents as we possibly can. And in the rural areas, it's very popular, the service, and the public are using it well in the rural area. And I think it would be a shame to sort of take that away, but I do accept what the member's saying, that it hasn't been fully considered, and that's something that perhaps we could look at further if you so wish.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I do understand that there's a desire for it to be accessible to everyone. First of all, we have a number now of state-of-the-art recycling facilities. The second thing, it's not a question of whether it's going to be better or worse. The fact of the matter remains is, however the intention to have it available to all residents, including rural areas, the fact is that this consideration of that option has not been fully explored by this committee or any other. And that's my point. Not about whether it's good or bad. Put it before members and let us see.
We can note that to bring that forward again.
Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, sir, this is a good report. There's obviously been a lot of hard work and effort put into it, and I have no problems whatsoever, as it were, in supporting the conclusions and the recommendations at section 2 of the report, particularly 2.3, where it's suggested that we agree today to expand the optimised trial methodology across the remainder of the Wigtown area. There is one issue, Chair, which I feel obliged to raise, however, and it's the claim. I'll put it no higher than that. I've received claims, other members no doubt have as well, that there are still certain health and safety issues, Chair, which remain to be resolved. And it's also being said, I think, by certain union representatives that they would feel that they have not been consulted in the way in which they ought. Now, that's not, that's not a criticism. Let me make that clear of Ronnie and his staff. What I would cite as an analogy, Chair, is that the last time when this committee considered it was actually Ronnie's vision for an enterprising council that raised the issue, it got the assurance, and my understanding is it's been implemented, that there would be the appropriate level of consultation with the trade union side. Can I ask in the circumstances, Chair, that we check out in this particular instance whether or not these claims are well founded, and if they are, Chair, that we have a focused and concentrated period of consultation with the trade union representatives and our staff or our employees to resolve any lingering or outstanding issues which may still have to be resolved. Once that's done, Chair, we steam ahead, as it were, and get the recommendations developed. As I say, it's not a criticism, Chair. I'm expressing, concerns that have been expressed to me. I would hope we would address these. As I say, let me repeat again, I think this is a good report. A lot of good work has gone into it, and I would commend Ronnie and his staff for doing so. I'll leave it at that just now, Chair.
Through you, Chair. We will certainly, again, go back and speak to all the employees. We have engaged proactively with them to get them to come on this journey. As was previously said in another report, our staff are our most valuable asset, and we've endeavoured to engage with them through this. But I'll certainly take the points on board. We have had a period of engagement to ensure that all the concerns were met. There may be bits that are drifting out to yourself and other members, but we will certainly take that on board and have a further round of discussion with the colleagues to ensure that all their concerns have been dealt with. And if there's anything that is highlighted as a health and safety issue or risk, we will proactively deal with that.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 243, measurement, the noise levels for recycling, Newton, Stewart and Nithsdale. Now, I've heard of centralisation, but Newton, Stewart and Nithsdale are 30, 40 miles apart. I just wondered what that was. Should there be a hyphen in there, or is it a mistake having Nithsdale in the first place? That was the first point. The second point was that on the noise protection for staff, presumably staff have got noise protectors. And is there a danger of them not hearing ordinary traffic coming along the road and maybe, being mowing down, is that the right word? But that's maybe too strong a word. But, being involved in an accident. I just wondered if there was a wee kind of crossover there somewhere.
Thank you. I think the part in the report, quite simply because it was a Nithsdale member of staff who did the report, and he's possibly, filled in a previous report with the data, so that's a typing error. So apologies for that. The recommendations found in that report are that hearing protection does require to be given, and we're currently sourcing that for the staff, and we're trying to get, it is in the market, hearing protection which dulls the big part of the noise, but still allows you to hear what's going on round about you. So that would alleviate your concern about them not being able to hear cars and things. Another thing that's been addressed is we're also going to put some more signage on our vehicles, which has come up as a result of the trial, to say men working at the side, because our current vehicles say staff working at the rear, but obviously when they're loading from the side, we need to get that addressed as well. So that's something that the staff themselves highlighted to us. And we've worked very closely with the staff going through this process, and they've come forward with a number of issues which we're all taking on board.
Could I just come back in there briefly, Colin? I notice that the vehicles that do this are purple in colour, and it doesn't really stand out very well for cars coming along the road. I appreciate it's maybe part of the corporate colour scheme, but it doesn't stand out. Maybe, yes, I think traffic approaching, it's all right with the locals, they might know about it, but if you've got visitors, that could be a problem.
We could possibly put further reflective material onto the vehicles as well, but they also have the flashing beacons on the top when they're in operation, which should attract the attention of motorists. But yes, the colour purple was for the corporate aspect.
Okay, I've got Patsy, then George.
Just a couple of questions. It's about the first trial that was done when you were doing a weekly rather than a fortnightly, and you reconfigured the vehicles. I thought the vehicles were very specific for food waste, particularly. How did you manage to do that? Are we conforming with what we're meant to be doing in order to pick up food waste and other recycling, paper and cardboard and things?
The main thing behind it is to keep the materials separate, obviously, so that they're not contaminating each other. Mm-hmm. Now, the food waste goes into the back of a small vehicle at the moment, and what happens on the bigger vehicle is there's a separate stillage for it. And what we had to do with that was to reinforce the inside of the stillage to take the food waste, make sure there was no leaks coming out of it, obviously. And when we unload it, we lift it off with forks and we lift it up and tip it directly into the skip that contains the food waste at the zero waste park. So a reinforcement bar was added to prevent it from twisting during the lifting process. That was all we had to do. There was no other requirements. And that was done in conjunction with Terberg, who supplied the vehicles. So they're fully agreeing with the modifications that have been made.
And just one other thing, I just noticed on page 232, which is, it's at the bottom there after part of the table 2 housing density analysis, and just at the bottom it says 3 at the very bottom. It's assumed that the ward boundaries are approximately reflective. I noticed that in Nithsdale it equals North West Dumfries and Abbey. Well, Abbey does take in Dalbeattie and Colvend and places like that, which really is most definitely Stewartry. And I just wondered if that is a problem, or if you're anticipating having Dalbeattie not being serviced by Stewartry vehicles.
Well, we haven't got to that level of detail with the recycling routes yet, but currently in the residual service we do cross-boundary collections with our vehicles. We go by the absolute geography rather than ward boundaries to get the most efficient service.
Thanks, Chair. It's just at the bottom of page 229 and top of page 230. Exactly what does that mean when we're saying separate, like a B2, average time taken to complete the round, 5 hours, average daily round size, 986 properties. What exactly is that saying?
Basically what we did was we analysed the movement of our vehicles from the time they leave the depot, from the time they're switched on in the morning before they ever leave the depot and they do their vehicle checks. Then they go to their first collection point and then we monitored them throughout the course of their working day. Now obviously the staff have breaks to have in that time, and there's also the time taken to travel to the disposal site. So the actual time taken to complete the round is 6.42 hours, and there's 3/4 of an hour's worth of breaks to be added to that to get to the full working day for the staff. So that is the actual time that the staff are working for, the 6.42. And the average round size was looking at all the rounds over the trial that we did and then dividing that by the total number to get the average number of properties covered in that working time frame. So it's what we can achieve in a day, basically.
Are you achieving 651 properties in 6 hours?
We can do, yes. Obviously, we weren't doing that in all of them, but that's what we extrapolate the data to mean. Yes.
Go down to the bottom one then. Are you're 986 properties in 5.5 hours?
That was only just for food, which is lifting one box and putting it in. It's not covering all of the items. In food, yes, because you're just lifting one box and heaving it in, but in the other ones you've obviously got, the full 4 boxes to deal with, which takes slightly longer.
On the basis of this trial, I presume you can project what sort of tonnage of food waste would collect across the region once it's up and fully running. Presumably that goes to anaerobic digesters. Is there actually an opportunity to have an anaerobic digester within the region? Remember I think it was last reports to this committee, it was no longer economical to collect methane from the locomotives. I mean, could we actually have an anaerobic digester feeding in rather than harvesting methane from locomotives?
I'll let you answer that, I think, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Nicola. We have a contract through Scotland Excel where we dispose of the food waste to an anaerobic digester. And the costs of that are such, they're very, very competitive. To actually invest and build our own at this moment in time does not look a good investment. There are a number of private third parties who are looking at that possibility, and we have been approached by a number of these. But again, they're looking for a guaranteed tonnage of waste. so they can formulate their business plan and get the funding that they need. So again, we cannot guarantee a certain amount of waste food waste for that purpose. So at the moment, we feel we have the best value solution, and that's through these contracts on Scotland Excel.
Okay, Archie.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, obviously being DG first year, this was pretty close to what we were looking at as a committee. I think when you look back at the start of this particular thing, when it was sort of forced through as a budget saving side of things, there was a lot of things that we did on this trial, and we had to trial them first, and that was the whole reason for doing it. There were mistakes that were going to be made, and we had to learn from those mistakes. And I think the staff have been absolutely fantastic in showing, their resilience in moving to this particular new trial, and I think the benefits are actually seen within this report. I think perhaps to give Alistair some confidence, health and safety, of course, is my background, and as part of DG First Enterprise and DG, I'll certainly be looking at health and safety, and I do have an individual discussion with trade unions as best I can, at least once a month, and they raise issues with me, which I will raise with the managers within the different areas. So I think this collection service has proven that we perhaps shouldn't have went to where we were initially. We should have perhaps done it in step by step, but that was a decision that was taken by, I think it was P&E initially. We certainly weren't in administration at the time. But I think what we've seen is that we can improve the service when we do trial these things. We can improve the situations that staff actually get into. I'll give the confidence that health and safety is certainly uppermost in my mind when I deal with this issue, and basically just to go with the recommendations, Chair.
Finally, Ivor.
Chair, see the table 2 when Councillor Gilroy brought out the part about note 3. How does that relate to the area, etc.? Just, you got area, and it's got note 3. It was assumed that the ward boundaries are approximately, etc. How does that actually inform us of what it actually means? Another thing, have we lost Upper Nithsdale? Because it's not in there.
I noticed the omission of Upper Nithsdale just yesterday. I do apologise, Councillor Dempster. With great trepidation, I was frightened you would notice that. Thank you very much, Councillor Hislop, for finding that. That's there, really, if we do go forward with this and then we further roll it out to the whole region, that will come into play more then. But at the moment, it's just relating to the Wigtown area that we're talking about today.
But can you just explain what it actually means? Area, and then it goes on to assume the boundaries are the same. Now, area I would have thought was the trial area, the control area in Wigtown, but what does the note reflect as in that heading of area?
It's basically just reflecting that the operating areas that we work to, being the 4, Wigtown, Nithsdale, Annandale and Eskdale and Stewartry, are broadly reflective of the ward boundary areas, which they are, but there are crossovers, as we spoke before with Councillor Gilroy about, in Stewartry and also in Upper Nithsdale as well. There's some cross-boundary working goes on there. Annandale and Eskdale and Nithsdale down towards the sort of Annan end of the area. There's some cross-boundary working goes on there currently. It's not going to be a factor in rolling this out. We do it with the residual collections at the moment. We look at where the properties actually are and whatever it can be most efficiently incorporated in a refuse round, that's how it's done. We don't leave a small cluster of 6 properties, with a vehicle having to travel quite a distance to get them when another vehicle from another area could service them more efficiently.
Okay, members, can we move to the recommendations? Are members happy to note 2.1, 2.2, happy to agree to 2.3? Yeah. 2.4, note 2.5, approve 2.6, note 2.7, and agreed to 2.8. Ian, Alistair, sorry.
With the addition of my request that we could get a report on the derogation on urban areas, please.
Forward, certainly, yeah, for consideration. Alistair?
Can I suggest, and let me make it clear in suggesting, Chair, I'm not trying to impugn Ronnie's integrity in the slightest. He's given us an assurance, as far as I'm concerned, you know, that'll be carried out, but it might be no bad thing for the record, perhaps to include an appropriate form of wording in the recommendations, if that's acceptable to you, sir.
I'm sure that would be no problem at all, yeah. We're happy to include that and make sure it's very clear. Okay, thank you very much for that, and thank you to the team for the work they've done in that trial period. Look forward to it being expanded across Wigtownshire. Okay, members. Item number 12, any other business? I don't have any other business. So can we turn to item number 13, which is consideration of the adoption of a resolution